fun එක next level කරන dialogue fan blaster.
Tonight, on First at 9 this Saturday the 14th of December 2024. The money milestone. Sri Lanka successfully concludes international sovereign bond restructuring. Nearly 98% of bondholders agree to exchange defaulted bonds for new instruments. The wig removed. President accepts Asoka Ranwala's resignation from the Speaker's office. 3 MPs tipped to become the next Speaker of the House. Proceed with caution. India's influence on Sri Lanka must not be taken lightly, advises a former envoy to India.
We have to accept that geopolitical importance of India and it cannot be ruled out.
Ambitious targets. Sri Lanka eyes $8.5 billion in tourism revenue and 4 million tourist arrivals during the next 2 years. Minister urges local industrialists to invest in tourism, assuring policy consistency.
Chilo Dairy, Sri Lankawama Kiren Perata. Obe Vishwase denu Sensodyne, then Langamati Pharmacy in Labagata Hacker.
Kanta parissan karagathot ape parissan.
Asian Paints Causeway Aquasave Vesat Mattuig Gedarat Disney.
This is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to Derana First at 9. I'm Aditya Drisingha joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. Now taking you straight to your top story this evening, Sri Lanka has successfully concluded the restructuring of approximately $12.55 billion of defaulted international sovereign bonds. The Finance Ministry said approximately 98% of bondholders have agreed to exchange the ISBs that were outstanding as of the 25th of November for new securities. President Anura Dissanayake hailed the successful conclusion of the ISB restructuring as a vote of confidence from both international and local bondholders. Sri Lanka recently announced the decision to exchange international sovereign bonds totaling approximately $12.55 billion that were outstanding as of the 25th of November 2024 for new instruments. The announcement received positive response from both the ad hoc group of bondholders and the consortium of domestic financial institutions, which together hold approximately half of the total outstanding ISBs. Accordingly, following the conclusion of the period for solicitation of consent from bondholders on the 12th of December, the Minister of Finance last evening announced the successful conclusion of the restructuring of Sri Lanka's international sovereign bonds with a high level of investor participation in the restructuring of all 11 categories of ISBs. The Finance Ministry said it expects 98% of the total outstanding international sovereign bonds to be exchanged for new securities, adding that the final result of the process is expected by the 16th of this month, while the settlement of the bond exchange is expected to take place on the 20th. However, according to a filing at the London Stock Exchange, the bonds that matured in July 2022, in which Hamilton Reserve, a holdout investor, claims a 25% stake, has only received 73% acceptance. Hamilton Reserve has filed a suit in New York insisting a full payment, but the proceedings have been stayed until the exchange is completed. The Finance Ministry in its statement said President Anura Dissanayake described the successful conclusion of the bond restructuring process as a vote of confidence from international and local bondholders and highlighted that the debt relief Sri Lanka is to receive will free up resources to finance the government's development and social agenda while restoring the long-term sustainability of public finances. Meanwhile, former State Minister of Finance Shehan Semasinghe took to X to convey his congratulations on the successful conclusion of the international bond restructuring, adding that he is proud to have led the process that was initiated during former President Ranil Wickremesinghe's tenure, despite heavy criticism and opposition from the present administration.
Through this process, the period for the repayment of the debt accrued through international sovereign bonds is being extended by over 5 years. Accordingly, the country will benefit from the reduction in the face value of the bonds, reduction in interest rates and the extension of the grace period for repayment. However, following the conclusion of this process, Sri Lanka has to also conclude bilateral debt restructuring in order to emerge from the default status.
ලංකාව ණය පැහැර හැරෙන ලද්ද රාජ්‍ය කියන එකෙන් මිදෙන්නේ ඇත්තටම.
පිරිපුන් ජීවිතයකට ඔබ සමගින් පෙරට Union Assurance.
Welcome to Cinnamon Life, South Asia's biggest entertainment hub, where awe awaits.
චන්දුරුසුමේ කාගෙන් මන අපේ සිග TV සඳහා සුපිරි ඩීල්.
Sadaharita Plantations Limited, celebrating 22 years of your trust.
Aspirations Education, a pioneer in overseas education. Meet our experts at top destinations worldwide. Your trusted and caring partner in overseas education.
Meanwhile, in the wake of public outrage and controversy surrounding the authenticity of his academic qualifications, Ashoka Ranwala tendered his resignation from the office of the Speaker of the House earlier today. Pursuant to the Supreme Law of the Land, Secretary to the President, Dr. Nandika Sanat Kumar Nayaka, has officially informed the Secretary General of Parliament, Kushani Rohanadira, that the President has accepted Ashoka Ranwala's resignation from the top office in Parliament.
Sri Lanka's political discourse was recently flared up by the controversy surrounding the academic qualifications of Speaker of Parliament Ashoka Ranwala. As public outrage escalated, Ashoka Ranwala publicly announced his decision to resign from the office of the Speaker of the House through a statement. Pursuant to the provisions of the Constitution, Ranwala had handed over his resignation to President Anura Dissanayake, who consequently accepted the resignation. The Parliament's Department of Communications stated that the Secretary to the President, Dr. Nandika Sanat Kumar Nayaka, has officially informed the Secretary General of the Parliament, Kushani Rohanadira, that the President has accepted the Speaker's resignation. According to official sources, the Parliament is set to convene again on the 17th of December. With Ashoka Ranwala's departure from office, the next session of Parliament is expected to be presided over by Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Dr. Rizvi Saleh. Political sources report that 3 names have already been suggested to fill the vacant office of the Speaker. The names suggested so far are incumbent Deputy Speaker Dr. Rizvi Saleh, along with parliamentarians Lakshman Nipunarachi and Nihal Galapatti.
Former Sri Lankan High Commissioner to India, Austin Fernandez, says neighbouring India's geopolitical influence on Sri Lanka and other nations must not be dismissed or ruled out. Joining at Hyde Park with Indivari Amuwath on Adha Derana 24, former Sri Lankan envoy to India, Austin Fernandez, says Sri Lanka must be mindful in receiving assistance from any nation, including India and the United States, while also keeping all allies in line. Commenting on the India-US joint military base previously proposed to be constructed in Trincomalee, he emphasized that such projects raise concerns on the breach of Sri Lanka's sovereignty.
There have been continuous opposition from SEPA, the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, to too much Indian involvement. At sometimes these were politically motivated. At other times these were genuine concerns by the people whether India's encroachment in Sri Lankan.
I think India being the big brother of Sri Lanka, we have to accept that geopolitical importance of India, and it cannot be ruled out. It is not only for us. It is for Bhutan, it is for Nepal, it is for Myanmar, it is for Bangladesh, for all those countries. India is a strong partner of development.
But in recent times, or maybe at least February 2022, during the visit by US Undersecretary for Political Affairs Victoria Nuland, there were media reports of a discussion for a military base in Trincomalee, although these were on official sources, confirmed sources that were relating these, a joint military base of the United States and India in Trincomalee. You mentioned about Trincomalee, but what are the risks here?
I think the Victoria Nuland's request for this one, luckily it was not accepted and it was not done. But she wouldn't have said that an Indian and American joint with him without asking India. That means India had agreed to this. Now, that is a very dangerous thing. To have a joint American and Indian military base in Trincomalee means the sovereignty and all those things which we love in Sri Lanka will be gone, because in May this other one is coming. coming. So people suspect, oh, it failed and there is another way of doing it. So that type of thing is not good. But the vision statement says about development, it's welcome. It's welcome. But having the partner as one country, specific country, means it will be a
So does this mean Sri Lanka should tread carefully when receiving assistance from India and working with India? President
not only with India, even with Americans or Chinese or Russians, we must be very careful.
Fast track your career from O levels with eSoft.
Diabetesol සීනි වලින් පරිස්සම් වන ඔබට අමතක නොවන පෝෂණය.
Prime Group ලංකාවේ ප්‍රථම වතාවට හඳුන්වා දෙන land leasing ලේසියෙන් මීටමක්.
Single 1111 up to 60% off from the 11th November to the 17th of November.
Kalani wire කිසි ගින්නක් නැහැ.
කිසි ගින්නක් නැහැ. Kalani Fire Shield Wire.
Apico Mattress. Sama sapata nidiyan Apico Spring Star Foam Mattress Madiri Rasakin.
The premiere of a documentary titled Experience the Global Unity in Diversity, launched by the youth movement Global Unites, took place recently in Colombo. Addressing the event, President and founder of Global Unites, Prashant Diviser, spoke on how the global Generation C has started to resist violence and transform nations through reconciliation and justice. Meanwhile, the national directors of the youth movement's member countries reflected on their conflicts and how they persevered through those crises and conflicts.
The premiere of the Global Unites documentary, Experience the Global Unity in Diversity, took place recently in Colombo. The premiere was followed by a youth leadership training program. Founder and president of Global Unites, Prashant Diviser, delivered a special lecture on how the youth embraces non-violence and national transformation.
Our greatest resource is the beauty of our nation's diversity. In Sri Lanka, where young people for the first time in their generation with histories of violence have said, we refuse to embrace violence and we want to express our grievances non-violently. Gen Z is embracing non-violent resistance in a way that other generations have never seen before. There are ways in which non-violence resistance can bring about sustainable change. Our children deserve better. We are responsible for the countries that we leave behind.
A panel discussion featuring the movement's national directors was also held at the event. The Global Unites national directors arrived from nations across the world, including the Democratic Republic of Congo, Kenya, Uganda, Afghanistan, United States, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Germany, Nepal and Colombia.
If you knew very well the country, that's the part where we have a lot of minerals. So that brought many cycles of war in our countries. And what we're still facing is that we have youth that are traumatized for years. We are growing up traumatized by all cycles of wars that we have in our country.
From the inception of our independence, on record, we have 16 years of civil conflict, and these conflicts has been political, social, economical, and religious as well. We have been manipulated. We don't want to see these things happen again, and that's why we do what we do.
We had 10 years long civil war in Nepal. Now the situation is better, but we are still facing religious disturbance, some social discrimination, deeper caste discrimination in Nepal, which gives us tension for being unity. And I can say we have till political based violence, religion based violence. We are here, the youth, how we can be unity, how we can create the peace to have the mutual understanding.
Every leader that has gotten into power in Uganda has gotten into power by way of violence. One of the longest conflicts that we've had in Uganda was one called the LRA War, the Lord's Resistance Army War, that lasted 20 years in the northern part of the country. There is peace now in the north, but still there are very huge tensions around the fact that we're still having the same leadership for the last 40 years.
The source of our struggles is that we were a country founded on a principle that we weren't following through on. We believe that all are created equal, but then we didn't act it out. It's time that the United States addresses the root of the problem, which is we have to really act and believe out that all are created equal.
The war actually devastated the country. We had a wage war for complete 11 years that killed several thousands of people and displaced many. So that's the kind of situation we live in at that time.
As a person coming from northern part of Sri Lanka, we could have better than this. We feel like the war is not end and
until we give a safer space for the other kids and young people, the Sri Lankans, to be united more than these, especially the Tamil and Sinhalese. So we fought without any proper reason. There were no any meaning that we had a war. There was a huge possibility to understand and acknowledge from the both party.
After Second World War, we managed to grow quickly. Now one of the strongest countries in entire Europe, and countries look up to us, the generation who experienced the war. They say never again. And now they hear people saying something against people from other nations. And I really would like to bring a good solution with the young generation to that conflict.
The European Union has allocated 175,000 euros, corresponding to approximately 53.8 million rupees, to provide emergency humanitarian assistance to people affected by the cyclone Fengal that launched across Sri Lanka. It comes in addition to the contribution of 350,000 euros earlier this year, following previous floods in the country. EU in Sri Lanka said in a statement that the funding will benefit over 37,000 people in some of the hardest hit areas in the eastern and northern provinces of Sri Lanka. Funded activities include the distribution of essential household items, school supplies and cash grants to the most vulnerable families, in addition to cleaning campaigns and actions to prevent possible outbreaks of diseases such as dengue. The funding is part of the EU's overall contribution to the Disaster Response Emergency Fund of the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has expressed its intention of expanding its initiatives in Sri Lanka. As part of this commitment, the foundation has agreed to provide the financial and technical assistance needed to implement nutrition projects, school meal programs for children, agriculture sector modernization projects, digitalization efforts, and livestock development programs in Sri Lanka. This commitment was affirmed during a meeting held today at the Presidential Secretariat between Minister of Labour and Deputy Minister of Economic Development, Professor Anil Jayanta Fernando, and officials of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Welcome back. Now on your business news, Minister of Health and Mass Media, Dr. Nalinda Jayatissa, says the government plans to generate $8.5 billion through the tourism sector during the next 2 years, while attracting 4 million tourists to Sri Lanka. The minister urged the Sri Lankan industrialists to invest in the tourism sector, assuring them that the government will adhere to a consistent policy regarding tourism.
Sri Lanka set its annual tourist arrival target for 2024 at an ambitious 2.3 million arrivals, alongside a revenue target of $3.5 billion. The Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority reported that 1,873,521 tourists arrived in Sri Lanka as of the 11th of this month, leaving the island nation 426,479 arrivals behind its annual target. Against this backdrop, Minister of Health and Mass Media Dr. Nalinda Jayatissa, during the inauguration of the Kalutara United Traders and Industrialists Association, commented on the government's targets for the tourism sector in the coming years.
Our government has a target of attracting 4 million tourists to Sri Lanka over the next 2 years and to earn $8.5 billion through tourism. Kalutara has been an area that we have neglected in terms of tourism. As part of our goal of attracting 4 million tourists, more tourists must be attracted to Kalutara. Therefore, I urge you to invest in the tourism sector. These policies will not be altered. One of your concerns has been the lack of policy consistency. However, that will no longer be the case. The Sri Lanka Bureau of Foreign Employment, in a report, said the number of Sri Lankan migrant workers who have travelled overseas for employment in 2024 surpassed 300,000. As per the report, 300,162 Sri Lankans left for foreign employment as of yesterday. This marks the second time in the past decade that such numbers have been recorded, with a previous high of 310,948 migrant workers migrating out of Sri Lanka being recorded in 2022. The SLBFE noted that a notable increase has been observed in the proportion of male migrant workers, which now stands at 60%, indicating 177,804 workers whereas 40% of the total workforce sent abroad were women, amounting to 122,358. Kuwait remained the top destination with 73,995 Sri Lankans finding employment there. The SLBFE projects the number of Sri Lankan migrant workers going abroad for work will likely exceed 311,000 by the end of 2024. In the meantime, remittances from migrant workers have contributed significantly to the economy, with Sri Lanka receiving $5.9 billion up to November 2024. Now, the Consumer Affairs Authority announced that it will continue raids across the island to monitor rice traders' compliance to regulations and the availability of stocks in the market. Director of the Consumer Affairs Authority, Asela Bandara, noted that approximately 75 raids were carried out across the country. Bandara also noted that relevant authorities are instructed to further carry out raids in view of taking action against those violating the price regulations. CAA authorities raided several stores in Petta today, which led to the identification of traders selling rice beyond the maximum prices set by the government. CAA director also added that rice prices are likely to drop considering the arrival of imported rice stocks to the market. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka State Trading Corporation took measures to import 52,000 metric tons of nadu rice. Its first consignment, consisting 5,200 metric tons, is expected to arrive on the 19th of December. And with that, we wrap up tonight's edition of Ada Derana First at 9. Stay in touch with us on www.adaderana.lk for the latest developments around the clock. Thank you. Have a great night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit adaderana.lk.